Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley Manners, former Division I track and field athlete, and this is the last episode of my mini-series called Student Athlete Tips. I hope you guys have been enjoying it so far, and we're wrapping it up on a topic that is near and dear to my heart for us international student athletes. This video is really for anyone who is not a US citizen, who is planning on or who is already studying in the US and playing a sport. More specifically, today we're gonna dive into some of the things that maybe aren't talked enough about as international student athletes studying here in the US. Now, if you're somebody who's in high school and is preparing to move overseas or come to the US to study, this video is great for you because I'm gonna talk about some of the things that they don't always tell you before you get here. And if you're already an international student athlete here, maybe some of these things will serve as some quick reminders. As always, if you end up liking this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more of this content and give this video a thumbs up. Let's get into it. The first thing that is not really talked about is the fact that NIL rules actually vary based on your visa status. For most international student athletes, the F1 visa is the most common type for studying in America, whether you're a student athlete or not. With the evolving landscape of NIL, there's actually been some new visa classifications that not a lot of people are talking about that maybe provide more opportunities for athletes to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. Now, these videos are meant to be super short, so I am gonna link a couple of resources in the description talking about the different visa types and if they could apply to you, because capitalizing on your name, image, and likeness is such an important part of the student athlete journey, and if you can qualify for any of these other visas, it might be something to consider. Now, if none of that made any sense to you, don't even worry, we're gonna get into number 2. The next thing that they don't really talk about is unexpected expenses. Contrary to popular belief, not everything is always covered in your scholarship across all sports. A lot of international student athletes end up having to pay for things out of pocket without realizing it. Things like your phone bill is not something that's covered on scholarship, and most of the time you have to get a new phone number when you come to the US, so figuring all that out is a whole process in itself. If you're somebody that lives off campus, there's a good chance that you'll have to pay some extra fees when it comes to renting, or if you have a house with other people, there'll be other fees involved there. And if you want to drive a car here, you have to make that purchase, you have to get insurance, you have to pay for gas. All these things that are not really talked about and not always covered in every single sport. Number 3, this kind of goes back to the visa conversation a little bit, but for those who are on F1 visas, which is the most common, you're only allowed to work for 20 hours a week, and it has to be on campus. This is the very limiting factor that prevents most international athletes from capitalizing on their NIL. It's a really frustrating rule because it is something that applies to all international students, regardless if they're an athlete. But now that NIL has become legalized, it really puts international students in a weird place because they're allowed to work on campus, but there are very strong limitations when it comes to navigating NIL and those rules. I will also link another resource in the description talking more about that. Number 4, scholarships are not always full rides. I feel like this is a huge misconception for a lot of international student athletes that when you come to the US and you get a scholarship, everything is going to be paid for. It kind of goes back to the last conversation about some of those unexpected expenses, but I'm talking like full scholarship, meaning your tuition, books, housing, food, all those things are not always offered to every single student athlete. In my own experience, at my first school, I was only on a 35% scholarship. So what that meant is I got a portion of my tuition covered and then I had to pay for everything else out of pocket. Now, I will say a lot of those rules are changing, especially at the Division I level where they're trying to get all student athletes on scholarship, not having to worry about any of that. But it is a real life experience that a lot of international student athletes have lived where they really have to work an extra job in order to help pay for the rest of their tuition. But yes, scholarships does not always mean a full ride, so just keep that in mind. Number 5 is the fact that you have so many documents to keep track of and to be aware of in order to be here as an international student athlete in the US. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to go back and get a signature in order to leave the country and be able to come back. The amount of times I've had to visit the global offices at both of my schools to make sure that I have all the documentation that I need before leaving the US so that I can come back in legally is insane. For example, if you want to go home for winter break and you got here in the US 6 months ago in the summer, you have to get a new travel signature on your visa in order to be let back in when you come back. And I feel like that's just something that I've never heard on the internet when we're talking about international student athletes. Like, there's so many little things that are not talked about in terms of little forms here and there and all the little requirements that you have to do. I feel like a really good tip of mine is to just keep a big folder with your passport, your visa, all your documents, and anything that you could possibly need when traveling in between the US and your home country. It really just eases the process of not having to rummage around for different files and documents that are essential for you to be studying and competing here. And lastly, this is probably something that is not talked about nearly enough and something that I've recently gone through myself, but it's the fact that you as the international athlete have to decide and figure out how you're gonna stay in the US if that's something that you desire after you graduate. I feel like about 6 months before I graduated, I had this epiphany and I was like, I'm not ready to go home yet. And thankfully, with an F1 visa, there is an option to extend your stay in the US, but there are specific rules. There's different classifications, and I won't get into all those details, but all you need to look into is something called OPT, which gives you 1 whole year of working in the US, getting your feet on the ground before you have to pursue a different type of visa to extend your stay. There's also something called a STEM extension, which actually gives STEM majors 2 years of working in the US post-grad. It's something to look into, and if you're somebody who is not ready to go home to their home country after you graduate, it's definitely worth taking a look and figuring out how you can make all that work, because I will say, it is an expensive process and it does take a lot of documentation and a lot of time. If you guys want a more detailed video on all that, I'm happy to go through that because I just went through that entire process, and trust me, I could have used a video like this to help guide me along the way. Well, that's a wrap on this video and a wrap on this series. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully you can take away a couple of things from this video, especially if you're an international student athlete out there. It really is such a great experience to compete in the NCAA, especially being from a foreign country. I feel like it's just such a character building and unique experience that you can't get anywhere else. I will always recommend it to anyone that has that opportunity, but it is a lot of work and there's a lot of moving parts. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys soon.